Looking at substance abuse and the way it progresses, it's a negative trend, but it progresses. People go from using just drug to different substance that you would wonder, how do they even think about this? What's your take on it?
All right, good morning, everyone. It's actually a pleasure to be here. Substance abuse is something that I would say has been here for a long time, and it is dynamically gaining ground. When I mean dynamically, I mean it's something that you don't even know how sometimes it comes up from, due to the fact that this is a psychological thing. So, so far, on where I come from the part of country where I come from, when you look at the northeastern Nigeria, there have been quite an alarming rate of these substance abuses, and sometimes it's even spanned to things that are unimaginable. Now, we currently look at things like local herbal things that youth will just come and take and make them lose their senses and whatnot. You hear things about people sniffing the gutters, or drinking formalin and all, just so to get high, or as they call it, get high, and all that. So it's something that has continuously been progressing and silently not being addressed.
From your experience as someone who has been, part of activities that has to do with war against substance abuse, I would like you to talk about some of your observations about the challenges associated with containing this development in Nigeria. And then what do you think can be done to ensure that this development is nipped in the bud?
Okay, thank you. So we've been able to start a youth-based organization in Gombe in the northeastern Nigeria. And one of the reasons why we came up with this is because we observed that gradually, you cannot take away drug abuse from, you cannot take away one of the causes of insurgency in the northeast is drug abuse. And we've observed that gradually there are things that they start from play, like joke. There are times when you hear that for instance, smoking weed, as they call it, it's illegal. It gets to a point where we have celebrities that people look up to, advertising in quotes to say in public. Now, regulations are the things that we have understood that has not been so effective. Now, when I say this, I don't mean that the NDLEA is not doing its part. They are doing so wonderfully well, but it is not something that NDLEA alone can handle. Now, when you look at countries like the United States, if with the strong DEA and all those bodies they have for regulations of drug and substance abuse is still happening there, it's something that you can't just leave it in the hands of NDLEA. It is something that everyone in the society has to take responsibility for that. Now, we observed that because of high increase in lack of jobs, that's unemployment, because of fashion trends, because of peer pressure, because of idleness and other things that you have, people easily enter into these addictions. And like it is said, the word addiction now, it's not like people try things for sports and all that, but these substances are psychoactive. There are substances that there are some that with a sniff or with just one injections, you are already addicted to them, so you cannot even help yourself. And those are the challenges we've been having. Now, we have seen that these things are taking away a lot of young people, a lot of vibrant young people in our region. And then we came up with saying, okay, we young people want to, okay, talk to our peers. If peer pressure is taking them, we can also form another kind of peer. This one, instead of pressure, we call it peer accountability and monitoring, whereby we kind of engage ourselves. We are young people. We engage ourselves in talking about these things. We engage ourselves in sport activities. We engage ourselves in soft skill development, in business development, in things that will keep the mental state of people active in a good way. Now, this has not been easy because the fight against drug abuse is actually something that is going to be in a very long-term activity, and it might be gradual. You might be winning some and losing some, but then it's something that is worth doing. Now, when you talk about what we have faced so far, the things is even the kind of facilities we have for rehabilitation and all that are not so adequate, and then they are not so effective. Now, we understood that these people are not, somehow they have turned NDLEA to like just the way we have police and criminals. What we said about drug addicts is the fact that we consider them as patients, not criminals. They are people who are already into these things and they cannot help themselves. Imagine you trying to do something, maybe lift a bottle of water to drink and you cannot do it, and you're thirsty. These are the things they face. So somehow we have been able to say, okay, let's not call them addicts. Let's not call them criminals. We are seeing them as patients, and so far, with even the help of NDLEA, we have been able to rebrand the kind of name, because we don't call it rehabilitation center now. It's being called a treatment and care center. So these are the things that are coming up, and we believe that it's going to be all right over time. So that is what has been achieved so far.
Okay, so as one who runs an NGO and you provide support for persons who have over time abused drugs, you said you don't refer to them as addicts. I want to stick to that. Okay, so how do you ensure that they don't just get treatment? Because some of them, because of the challenge of caring for them, they've had issues with their family, relationship with families have been strained. How do you interface between them and the family to ensure that they are provided every support to stay sober?
All right. It is often said that when you do a thing the same way I expect different results, it's kind of insanity. So that's some of the things that had made us to think and say, what is wrong? How can we do this better? And like you said, a lot of people have been disconnected because of the stay on these active substances. So what we have been able to do is, through the society, we've been able to find means to say, okay, how can just this treatment and rehab take a different form? Now, the treatment and care center that we have in currently in Gombe, it's also equipped with what do you call it? Small and medium scale business acquisition center, whereby these people are being trained. They've been taught how to maybe sew, and then how to use computers, how to become active. Now, one of the keywords we look out for during our own activities is to say we want to integrate or reintegrate these people back to the society. And then you know that they are in categories. There are some that already they have what to do, but do not have the capital to start, because they've always used the money from the business to fund to source for those drugs and whatnot. There are others that do not have skills. So we don't just put them in a rehab. The conventional rehab in most parts of the country is whereby you just keep people and maybe tie them if they have gone to that point where they are violent and all that. And sometimes I even hear of cases where they beat such people until they can no more take these substances. So, excuse me, these things, what we do now is to make sure that we categorize you, we know what's actually your challenge, and then we find a solution to it. The major consistent problems with treatment and care for people who abuse substances is the case of relapse. Now, you stay in a place for 6 7 months or 1 year, and you've been able to in those period stay off these substances. And by the way, we believe in a system called harm reduction. Now, harm reduction does it in a way that you taper the doses of what they have been taking over time until they are off it. And then that is one of the reasons why it's expensive. So whenever we get to that point whereby we have a willing individual and the person is off drugs, we ensure that this person, we understand their challenge. If it was, for some it was even a case of emotional challenges. A girl broke his heart, started drinking, started smoking things and all that. So we understand whatever it is that led them to those points, and then we look out for how we can solve them. If it is a lack of what to do, we find what to do in a small scale or whatever form we can, and give it to them. If it is lack of companionship or whatever, we encourage people. We have a set of what do you call them, psychologists that actually do this thing. They tend to engage them and understand the particular challenge and try to meet up with those things as we look out for triggers of relapse. Thank you.
All right. There's a report or a research that suggests that substance abuse in Nigeria is more prevalent among students now, talking about secondary school students and even undergraduates. I would like to have your take in this regard, or some of your findings related to these experiments and to these statistics. I would like to have your take in this regard.
All right. This statement is actually quite true, and it's unfortunate that we have found ourselves in this situation. Now, when this thing started, it was most times, I think it's because of the nature of our country, whereby anybody, you see adults sending children to say, go and buy this for me, or go and get this for me. We have cases whereby secondary school students are the ones actually doing the active pushing of these drugs on the streets, because somehow, because of our regulations and all that. So it's quite unfortunate that the young children or the young students are finding themselves in this situation, because it takes a lot of your life. There are things that you may not even understand now, but in the near 5 10 years, that is when you will now begin to see the effect of it. Now, these things are happening because, like I said earlier, regulations are quite relaxed on age and certain things. So we tend to have young people going to buy alcohol for adults. You tend to find young people in secondary school organizing parties, unsupervised parties, and all that. So because of the fact that they're young and they are vibrant and they are energetic in all, they tend to trigger fall to these activities. And so far it's been difficult. Now we had this case in Maiduguri, whereby most of the repentant, what do you call them, um, um, what do you call them, insurgents, are finding it difficult to say. It is even more difficult to stay off drug addiction than to stay off religious extremism. So you see, this thing is not an easy thing. Psychologically, drug addiction is one of the hardest things to take off in a young person, in a person. Then imagine if a young person is already into it. It means that for the rest of their lives, they are going to be taken by this thing. And it has this ripple effect that always comes with it. For instance, now, he's taking substances. He begins to stop going to school or becomes rude to people in the society. This means that he cannot go and have a proper education. The second ripple effect is the fact that he or she may not even learn certain hand skills or crafts that whenever he grows up, he would be able to use to fend for his living. And then it continues on and on and on. It leads to issues of rape, it leads to unwanted pregnancy, it leads so it's an unending ripple. And that is why it's quite unfortunate that young people are found in these activities.
There are those who aid drug abuse. Either they're producers of the substance, they're sellers, or they provide a place for the abusers to convene and have this practice ongoing. What are you doing to reach out to them? Because yes, you can be reaching out to the victims or to those who are neck deep into drug abuse. But what about the society that we live in, the community where we have the producers, the aiders of drug abuse? What are you doing in this aspect, and what can be done to ensure that people provide support to discourage this trend?
Now, globally, drugs don't just move themselves. People do that. People move them around. And so these are the things that we are looking at in such a way that in our cities, we have what we call red zones, whereby we know that, okay, in this area, once you go to this place, it is common, it is a norm and all that. So what we try to do is to pass on messages around. We tend to use the media, like your kind of organizations, the radio houses and all that. We tend to use them to pass on messages to people living in such communities. We go and tell them, okay, you are young people coming up. It is possible for you to grow and become useful in the society. We don't go with the message of condemnation. We don't go and say you're a bad guy. No, we go to that point where we say, okay, you and I'm a pharmacist, this is a doctor, what are you doing? You don't think you can be like us? So we go to those places to encourage the young people to say, okay, you can actually stay off this and become more useful and relevant to yourselves. And for the red zones, what we do is the fact that through the help of government, we tend to work in such a way that we clear such areas. Now, when I say we clear such areas, I don't mean we go and fight them. Now, if there are areas that we know it's a corner or one sharp bend or one tree under a tree or something that we know that these things usually happen, what we encourage is that we encourage activities to be done in those places. Imagine an area whereby it's a corner or it's a lonely part where these people stay. What we do is we organize, for instance, an outreach in those places whereby it becomes full of people. It becomes we engage them in activities like games and all that. And because of the number of people in that place, those who engage in the push or the sale of these substances tend to run away from it. The truth is, all these things happen. It's mostly happening in quotes in the dark. So they tend to utilize the opportunity whereby these things cannot happen. And thanks to governments like the one we have in Gombe, if a place is known for a particular activity, the governor has a way of maybe turning it, maybe opening road channels and all that, so that it becomes more accessible to people and criminals tend to stay away from those areas.
Okay. There's this general perception that the best way to help someone who is addicted is to rechannel the addiction to something positive. I would like you to talk about some of the practical ways to help victims or people who are struggling with addiction.
No, that's true. So to help a victim of addiction or a person who is already taken by addiction, the first thing you need to do to help him is to empathize with the person. Now, what you are doing is to understand the person's perspective to life, and then you try to gain him over. Now, when I say this, I don't mean you encourage the habits. No, you're trying to tell the person, yes, I know you're already into this thing, because one of the things about addiction is the guilt. So that pushes the person to go into hiding and all that. But when you express to the person that, yes, I know this is what you're into, I know this is what you're going through, but I believe there is hope for you in this situation. And these are activities, are things that have actually been done by our religious leaders, our faith leaders, and all that. You know, imagine if somebody, most times we tend to push them, away. You leave this place, you're worthless. No. So the first thing to do is to give them that sense of belonging, to say, okay, you're already here, but we need to make you um stop or move out of this to this place. When you win the person's perception and confidence, the person will be able to follow through anything you're trying to do. Now, when that happens, the next step to do is, like I said, understand the person. There are people that will stay off addiction, but once, or stay off substances, but once they are around certain people or certain friends or certain substance or environment, they tend to go back to it. So when you understand this situation, the next step is to take it away from them. Now, in rehabilitation or treatment, you know, there's this removal of substances. Now, we do removal in two ways. You either take the substance away from the person, or you take the person away from the substance. And these things have been able to be found very helpful. And lastly, we have also realized, because of the trigger ripple effects of these things, reintegration is difficult for people. So people have lost 5, 10, 15 years of their lives to these things, and then their mates are already managers in banks, their mates are already doing well in the society. How do you now say, okay, stop this thing and come back to being normal, and come back to getting the normal state in the society? So one of the things is to find what they can do and what they are passionate about doing. Some are into crafts and all that. So we encourage that, and then provide soft loans or capital for them to start up these things to do.
In this that you do, how can NGOs be strengthened? What would private organizations need to do? What would government need to do? What we individuals, members of society need to do to strengthen NGOs in the work to ensure that it may not be eradicated, but drug abuse is reducing? Those who are already there are provided with support they need to come out of it.
Yeah, non-governmental organizations are already doing a lot of activities in this sphere, but nonetheless, there's this saying in pharmacy. We have a slogan. We say, "As men of honor, we join hands." Now, the process of reducing this whole menace is not just an NGO kind of thing. It's not just one person's efforts that would lead to success. It's something that a lot of hands needs to be on deck. We need to support each other. We need to provide help to each other. So there are lots of collaborative means whereby we can collaborate with faith-based organizations, with schools, with individuals that are philanthropic in nature. Like my organization, we tend to get a lot of support from the United States government. We tend to get a lot of support from individuals in the society that believe, because one thing we know is that if you are not affected by drug abuse directly, you are affected by it indirectly. So people in the society need to understand that if you don't come together and push for this kind of cause, it is something that will still fall back to you. So a lot of hands need to be on deck. NGOs need to get support from government. We need to collaborate, and I believe that will be able to reduce drastically how these things can be done. We can engage schools. Schools need to have certain subjects or periods whereby you talk with these people and let them understand why you're doing this. Not just say you punish them when they do wrong.
All right. To wrap up now, how do we address the issue of stigma, that trails substance abuse or for victims of substance abuse? Even instances where they need to reintegrate into the society, you have this kind of prejudice or bias towards them in the workplace, in their environment. How do we address this?
Okay, because drug addiction is a psychological thing, stigma can be seen or can be addressed in two ways. The first most important part of stigma you need to address is self-stigma. People stigmatize themselves, like, I cannot enter this place because. So the first thing you do is to build confidence in them, to say, okay, you were here, yes, but now you are here. And it's a gradual process. It's a gradual thing that it takes a while that before people begin to trust you and say, okay, yes, you can be able to do this. So the first thing is to address it internally. Talk to yourself, talk to people, and say, okay, yes, you are no more the same person that was taken over by alcohol. Now you are clean, you are good, you can be able to integrate without fear, and then don't be afraid to try. Trying is what makes it able to. So today he's been able to enter his social or religious sect. Tomorrow he's being given responsibilities to handle, and gradually he will be able to say, okay, actually I can actually do this, and then it continues. But for the second part of stigma, which comes from the external, from the society and people, these things are the things we are trying to address yearly. We provide sensitization and awareness to people. One of the first things we do is to engage the immediate families of these persons. The truth is, the family is the first point of contact for anybody. And when your family is there for you, it increases that confidence level you have to engage the society. So the saying of charity begins at home is those kind of things that we begin with. So we tend to encourage them to say, okay, please cut down the way you tend to look down on these people. Now, somebody who was addicted is in the house, and then you have younger ones around, you tend to give them more responsibility because you don't trust this person. Try and initiate the process of trust, and with time the person is going to become reliable. So we tend to do both. When you are doing rehab in quotes for an addict, you are also supposed to engage the family and provide a sort of rehab, also a sort of a mental change, or try to make them aware of how they can also be supportive to this person. And then finally, when it's done in the family level, you can now move out to the society. Now, media organizations have always helped in addressing some of these things. We tend to cut down how we talk to these people. We tend to try and, especially for those that theirs has actually taken a hold of them, that maybe they were mentally imbalanced and all that. We tend to tell people, please don't address them. Don't use what you knew about them against them. So it's a gradual thing. It starts from self to family, then to society. And these are the ways we can do this.